Humanity has always been obsessed with moving people and things faster, farther, and more efficiently, ever since the first wheel rolled into history. But have you ever stared at a massive object and thought, how did that even get there? Some transports are so mind-bending, they seem like the work of aliens. And honestly, you wouldn't be blamed for thinking that. The scale, the logistics, the sheer power involved, it's wild. From an enormous sheep on wheels to the most behemoth land vehicle ever built, here are the 15 most incredible transport operations. Number 15. Wind turbine blade transport. If you've ever stood near a wind turbine, you know these things are massive. And transporting the blades, that's a logistical nightmare turned engineering masterpiece. With some blades reaching lengths of up to 280 feet, winding mountain roads become obstacle courses. Trucks can't just take a straight route and hope for the best. The roads dictate the plan. One striking example happened in China's Yunnan province, where a firm had to deliver 90 turbines to the summit of Baoding Mountain. Now there was just one tiny problem. The roads were way too tight for those long blades to make basic turns. So the company developed a custom hydraulic lifting system that could adjust the angle and height of each blade mid-transit. It allowed the trucks to navigate 212 intense turns, some at 30-degree slopes. The Chinese used no special aircraft or teleportation, just raw ingenuity and math that would make your head spin. It's proof that even the most awkward objects can be moved if you're stubborn and smart enough. Number 14. Power Station 640-ton transformer. Not much on Earth outweighs a space shuttle, but this 640-ton power station transformer gave it a run for its money. We mean, look at that. In 2013, it was moved from Didcot Power Station in Oxfordshire to the docks at Avonmouth, Bristol. The operation took 9 months to plan and wasn't exactly subtle. This beast stretched 328 feet long, spanned nearly 17 feet wide, and rolled so slowly it caused a 13-mile traffic backup. At just 4 miles per hour, the transport crawled across highways with 2 full motorway lanes blocked. The convoy included 20 escort vehicles and stretched the length of 10 buses. When it reached Bristol, it wasn't over. The transformer was headed next to Nottinghamshire's Cottam Power Station. Depending on the terrain, up to 3 trucks worked together to pull or push the load. Hills meant more muscle. For the haulage company's veteran manager, this was the most complex job in over 2 decades. And for the British roads, well, it was the largest single object ever moved across them. Number 13. Moving America Sits Massive Sea Radar. There are things that don't make sense, and this is one of them. When the U.S. Navy needed to move its giant floating radar station from Texas to Hawaii in 2006, there was no easy answer. The SBX-1 isn't a typical tech, it's the world's largest X-band radar, mounted on a floating oil platform. It spans 240 feet across, 390 feet long, and stands 280 feet tall. And when it hits the water, it displaces 50,000 tons. Normally it moves under its own power, but for this trip, it needed a serious tow. That came courtesy of the MV Blue Marlin, a heavy-lift ship built for jobs like this. The journey covered over 15,000 miles across the open, dangerous ocean. So, why go to all that trouble? Well, it's because when activated, this radar can spot a baseball-sized object launching into space from across the U.S. That kind of capability is priceless. So, yup, it was worth the $900 million price tag. You don't cheap out on intercontinental eyes in the sky. Number 12. Space Shuttle Fuel Tank Sips LA Crawl. One of NASA's last surviving space shuttle fuel tanks had one final journey to make, but not into orbit. This 154-foot-long, 33-ton behemoth needed to get from Marina del Rey to the California Science Center in Los Angeles. First came the barge ride, 19 hours on the water. Then came the crawl, a 16.5-mile trip through LA streets at a snail's pace. 5 miles per hour was the max, and everything along the route had to give way. City crews trimmed trees, unbolted traffic lights, and cleared intersections. Even astronauts showed up to accompany the tank on its symbolic march. At one point, the convoy had to cross the 405 freeway, a moment that felt surreal even by Hollywood standards. But it made it inch by inch. The tank would eventually join the retired shuttle Endeavour on display. This wasn't just a move, it was a celebration of space history rolling down familiar roads, and it proves again that humans can do a lot of things. Number 11. NASA SIPS giant rocket crawlers. Well, this one is pretty old, but just look at that metal monster. Back in the 1960s, when NASA was racing to land on the moon, they had to build their own tools from scratch. One of those tools wasn't flashy, but it was vital: the crawler transporter. These behemoths, named Hans and Franz, are still rolling today more than 50 years later. Built to carry rockets from the assembly building to the launch pad, they weigh a back-breaking 6 million pounds and stretch 131 by 114 feet. Nothing about them is fast. They max out at just 2 miles per hour. But when you're hauling a skyscraper-sized rocket, speed's not really the point. Only 2 of them exist, and despite all the tech NASA's built since, nothing has replaced them. In fact, engineers aren't even sure they could recreate them if one ever failed. It's not just about size, it's about precision. And these monsters still do the job better than anything that's come after. Sometimes old school still wins. Number 10. The Big Merino. Goulburn, a modest city in New South Wales, Australia, might not grab headlines, but once you visit, you'll never forget it. That's thanks to a 100-ton concrete sheep known as the Big Merino. Built in 1985 to honor the region's wool industry, this enormous sheep was modeled after a real-life stud ram named Rambo, who lived on a local property. Constructed with steel framing, wire mesh, and reinforced concrete, it took 6 months to complete and was designed to last forever. But then came the bypass, an expressway that left this woolly giant stranded in a forgotten corner of town. So what did the city do? They moved it. Yep, the entire sheep was hoisted onto a truck and driven half a mile to a more visible spot near the highway's southern exit. To boost its appeal, they added a gift shop and an exhibition dedicated to Australian wool. And just like that, the Big Merino got a second life, becoming a true symbol of quirky Aussie pride. Number 9. The levitated rock that became art. In 2007, a massive boulder tumbled down a hillside in Riverside, California. Most people saw a rock. The Los Angeles County Museum of Art saw a masterpiece. They decided to turn it into the centerpiece of a new exhibit called Levitated Mass. But moving a 340-ton, 20-foot-tall stone across 85 miles is tough. It couldn't be cut or reshaped. It had to be hauled in one brutal piece. Engineers suspended it with thick cables between 2 125-foot-long steel beams, mounted it on a special transport rig, and crept through Southern California at just 5 miles per hour. One truck pulled, another pushed from behind. Streetlights, signs, even power lines had to be removed and reinstalled, block by block, hour by hour. The haulage firm called it the biggest monolith move since ancient Egypt. What started as a rock slide ended up redefining modern sculpture. And the boulder, it still sits there in LA, daring every visitor to rethink what art really looks like. Number 8. Ton Fukushima Emergency Pump. After the 2011 tsunami triggered partial reactor meltdowns at Japan's Fukushima plant, the clock was ticking. Authorities needed a way to cool the compromised reactors, and fast. The answer? A 95-ton concrete pump designed to deliver water or concrete from 2 miles away was flown in on a massive Russian cargo jet. Originally headed for Vietnam, this particular model had a 200-foot boom and sat on a 26-wheel truck. It could be controlled remotely in high radiation zones, making it invaluable. The pump's mission? Spray cooling water into exposed reactor cores and later entomb damaged sections in concrete, all from a safe distance. It first flew into Atlanta, where it joined a second pump arriving from Los Angeles before heading to Japan. With backup systems fried and reactor temperatures climbing, Japan needed more than hope. They needed engineering that could handle disaster. TEPCO paid $2 million apiece for the pumps. And in a crisis that demanded action, these weren't just machines, they were lifelines. Number 7. Giant boilers bound for Sweden. These 5 boilers, each tipping the scales at 310 tons, needed to be removed from the Berkeley Power Station in Gloucestershire and shipped to Sweden for scrapping. Easier said than done. The boilers were 70 feet long and had to travel by road to Sharpness docks. The distance wasn't far, but the complexity was off the charts. Every mile meant lifting telephone lines, removing traffic lights, and temporarily shutting down roads. Each trip crawled at walking speed, escorted by teams ensuring that nothing got snagged or smashed. Once they reached the docks, the boilers were loaded onto a barge and floated down to Portbury before beginning their sea voyage north. In Sweden, they'd be melted and repurposed. For the villagers watching them roll past, it wasn't just another haul, it was a moment. It's not every day 5 massive industrial relics parade through your neighborhood like a mechanical farewell tour. What do you think about it? Number 6. Space Shuttle Enterprise Journey. In 1977, the sight of a space shuttle strapped to the back of a jet airliner wasn't CGI, it was the real deal. The prototype shuttle Enterprise was carried on top of a modified Boeing 747 for a series of landing tests over California's Mojave Desert. This wasn't just for show. NASA needed to see if the shuttle could glide and land safely. The 747's entire structure was reinforced to handle the shuttle's weight, which was secured using 3 custom struts equipped with explosive bolts for release. Across the year, Enterprise completed 8 test flights, 5 passive, 3 active. During the approach and landing trials, the plane climbed to 20,000 feet, tilted the shuttle's nose upward, and then detached it mid-air. Enterprise descended swiftly, touching down on Rogers Dry Lake just 2 minutes after release. It was a dramatic high-stakes rehearsal for future space missions, and it worked. No rockets, no orbit, just raw flight mechanics proving that a shuttle could land like an aircraft, even after plummeting from the sky. Number 5. Telescope Mirror Transport. Back in 2003, the world watched with curiosity and anxiety as Arizona prepared to house the most powerful optical telescope ever built. Located on Mount Graham, this wasn't your average observatory. The main challenge? Transporting its 27-foot wide, 18-ton mirror through rugged, winding terrain. The journey stretched over 122 miles of highways, hairpin turns, and the notoriously twisty Swift Trail. With the mirror secured inside a massive steel transport box, the total haul came in at a jaw-dropping 55 tons. The process involved engineers, scientists, police escorts, and expert haulers. Planning alone took 5 months, and yes, they even ran a full-scale test using a dummy mirror to make sure the real one wouldn't crack under pressure. Supervisors walked every mile of the road by foot to ensure it was safe enough. After all that prep, the mirror finally reached its mountaintop home, ready to give astronomers the clearest view of our galaxy ever captured. One wrong bump and this story could have ended in disaster. Number 4. Floating nuclear scrapyards. When it comes to decommissioning nuclear ships, there's no room for errors, and the Sakura floating dock does that job in a beastly way. Built through a collaboration between Japan and Russia, this massive platform is designed to dismantle radioactive naval vessels safely and efficiently. It's not your average dry dock. It gets positioned wherever the job is needed, and from there, specially trained teams begin the long process of making dangerous machinery safe to scrap. One example is the TNT-50, a nuclear maintenance vessel that had reached the end of its service. Before a single bolt could be removed, radiation shielding had to be installed on all sides, including a massive plate beneath the hull. The dock itself acted as both a barrier and a work site, keeping surrounding waters and workers protected. These operations don't make headlines, but they matter. Without systems like this, one old vessel could trigger an ecological disaster. It's not flashy, it's not fast, but it's the kind of quiet precision that keeps the world from blowing up. Number 3. 2 jumbo jet fuselages. Hit the road. In 2015, drivers in the UK weren't expecting to be stuck in traffic behind airplanes. But that's exactly what happened when two decommissioned Boeing 747 fuselages were moved from Cotswold Airport to a college in Staffordshire. Each fuselage, 60 tons of metal and memories, was sliced into sections, but still stretched over 130 feet long and 22 feet wide. The sheer size took up entire lanes and forced dual carriageways into temporary one-way streets. Why go through all that trouble? These weren't just being scrapped, they were being transformed into design studios for interior architecture students. It was cheaper than building new facilities, and the novelty of learning inside a plane, unmatched. While drivers fumed over the delays, the convoy pressed on, escorted by teams removing street furniture and adjusting to every narrow turn. Once in place, the fuselages were reassembled to give students a creative space with a serious backstory. Because sometimes the best classrooms don't have walls, they have wings. Number 2. The muon ring. Moving scientific equipment is rarely exciting, but the 17-ton muon ring that traveled 3,200 miles across the U.S. was anything but boring. Originally housed at Brookhaven National Lab in New York, the ring needed to reach Fermilab in Illinois, and the move required both water and road transport. The structure was huge, 50 feet wide and hypersensitive. Even a tiny twist in its coils could have ruined the entire device. So, precision mattered more than speed. First, it was carefully loaded onto a custom barge and floated down the Atlantic coast, around Florida, and up the Mississippi River. Once docked, it wasn't smooth sailing. Road crews had to cut down trees and remove street signs to make space. Trucks crawled along back roads with inch-perfect movements, and everything had to be restored behind them. The ring made it intact, ready to help scientists unlock the mysteries of particle physics. It's not every day that traffic yields to a subatomic experiment, but this time the highway belonged to science. Number 1. World's sixth largest cargo plane. Most epic transport operations happen on land. But when the Soviets needed to haul a space shuttle and rocket that were too massive for roads or rails, they went sky high, literally. In the late 1980s, they built a custom aircraft just for this job, the Antonov An-225 Mriya. This beast had 6 engines, 32 wheels, and a payload capacity of 550,000 pounds. Its purpose? To transport the Buran space shuttle and Energia rocket across the Soviet Union to Kazakhstan. The An-225 was, and still is, the world's largest cargo plane. Built by the Ukrainian state-run company Antonov, it was a one-of-a-kind engineering marvel, and while it was originally meant for aerospace missions, it's found new life in humanitarian work. After 2 years of maintenance, its first return mission delivered medical supplies from China to Europe during the COVID-19 crisis. Not bad for a Cold War-era creation. This isn't just a plane, it's a flying titan with a legacy as heavy as its cargo. If you found this video interesting, be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you soon in the next one.